average shots, I think there might have been like 10 or something. I'm probably botching the numbers, but it was something low. It was like something like 10. And nowadays there's 30. And I'm like, no. And then you get people who are so dogmatic. Talk about dogma. So dogmatic around science. So people can become dogmatic about religion and spirituality, and you can become dogmatic about science, which is, you get all these anti-vax moms being attacked, like verbally attacked and assaulted almost for having their views by science-based communities and talking about herd mentality or herd immunity and and things like this. And I'm like, I think that these people have bought into science like some have bought into religion, and now they're blinded to the fact that science can be wrong too. In fact, they're bought and paid for also scientists and what have you.
Right. I mean, we can't, after the discovery of quantum physics, I mean, you can't say anything anymore,
And I love that.
Yeah, me too, because it's like you can't even take scientists and hold them to any sort of standard for truth or fact, because the fact is something only behaves the way that you expect it to when you're paying attention to it, and that is science.
It changes by the observer. I love all those movies that came out years ago, like What the Bleep Down the Rabbit Hole, and, really gave me a really good understanding of a lot of my thoughts and ideas are based in what I would consider studies of quantum physics. And I love it. String theory, it's my type of science, and it feels really open-ended, and it has that mystical feel. And I think that we should always have that wonderment. There should be no one answer, science, religion, or otherwise. We should just always have that curiosity that's always going to bring us truth.
Right. Well, there is no one answer because this is an expanding universe.
That's right. Yes. Let's take a look at I guess we'll call it prophecy, or my epiphany that I had and I've been forming over the last couple of weeks. And I've talked about it a little bit on a couple of my other shows, but I'm really getting a nice vision on it. So I want to state my claim, and if anyone has anything to say about it, you should definitely email us at heartoverego@gmail.com. That's the one we're using for this show. We'll get a new one, but that's the one we're using now. And so in some of my understandings and some of my theories, you pick the womb you come out of, and you also pick the time or the day or the year, however you want to look at it, whenever you come out. So you have an idea of around when you're going to be born and what womb you're coming out of. It's a bit of a roll of the dice after that, but there are some prophesized ideas of what could happen. So it's really a roll of the dice when you incarnate, but there are some high intentions that have a lot of gravity, and I've picked up on one of them, and it's pretty intense, so I'll go into it. So if you pick the womb and the time frame that you come out of, you'll notice that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump were born with just a few years from each other. So I think Bernie's maybe 3-ish years older than Trump, something like that. And they were both born in New York. One on a much lower pay scale range. Bernie Sanders grew up much more poor than Trump, and you can hear it in their voices. I had an East Coaster tell me, you can tell Trump was schooled, that East Coast draw was definitely schooled out of him, where you can hear it in Bernie, and it's you can tell the difference of their social status by their dialect, or their, I guess we'll call it an accent. So my idea is they came in, because you choose to come in, you don't get forced. So they chose to come in to do what I would call the biggest battle on the planet, and it's definitely the oldest in the books, good versus evil. Now, whether you think Trump's the good one and Bernie's the evil one, or vice versa, it doesn't matter. It's the actual energies going toward each other and actually giving us an opportunity, if the voting system is not rigged, let's hope, let's just pretend it's not, but it's giving us an opportunity to vote for heart energy or ego energy. And I think the answer, and if I had to guess psychically, because that's really what it is, I can't tell what the future holds, we create it each day, but if I had to guess, I would say that Bernie Sanders is going to win, which will then really end a reign that's been going on for 2,000 years, starting with Jesus Christ himself. Now, Bernie Sanders, I don't think is an incarnation of Jesus Christ, but I do feel like those socialist Jews are buddies, and I definitely think that they have incarnated together and they work together in some fashions. But what the idea is that Bernie's coming to the table bringing some wildly different ideas, just like Jesus did. And I'll let you know that Jesus was called all the names in the book, just like Bernie's been called all the names in the book. But they're
Right.
working for social justice, in my opinion. Again, you be the determiner of how you feel about all of it. This is my podcast, so I want to state my claim here. I want to hear Tasha's in a second. But I do feel that they came in to experience their life and to grow and to move through and to learn. But at some point in it, go up against each other to determine what reigns supreme, heart energy or ego energy. Right now, ego energy is running rampant and ruling the roost. But if we can change tunes and bring in a more heartful leader, one who has our best interests at heart, we will then have tipped the scales a bit and brought more heart energy, or the voting of Bernie Sanders will show that a majority of the people are interested in these open-ended, growthful ideas. So we're watching a big battle go down, and it's definitely looking like the presidential race, but there's a lot of metaphorical, symbolic, and mystical and spiritual things happening inside of that construct, we'll call it, and it really is looking like the oldest story in the book, good versus evil. What do you think about that?
Oh, I'd have to agree that that is probably very likely the case. I mean, I look at it as, I've had a roller coaster ride with Trump. I mean, when he was first coming onto the scene, I couldn't stand him. I was like, we must protest, And then as things went on, I started realizing that Trump is actually a great asset for the United States and what's happening right now for exactly what you were talking about. I mean, as we're awakening on a dualistic planet, that means that as high as the light rises, that's also as high as the dark has to rise. And there just comes to a place of neutralization for it. Other than that, they're going to rise at the same height. So where we see with Trump that, all these hate groups and hate speech that is, coming to light, it was always there. It's just that it's being brought into the light now. So as it's rising, so is the heart-based energy. I watched this video one time about Trump's astrology, and his astrology is all about ego. He's, what do they call him, the ego tester? And I would have to say that that's completely right, because he tests the ego on both sides. You either have the people that are, standing as supporters of Trump, whose, only reason is relating to ego-based ideas. There's no reason to stand for Trump unless you're relating to an ego-based idea. And then you have the other side of people that, are standing against Trump, the protesters, but they're still responding out of ego. It'd be really interesting to watch how these two sides of the same base of ego have rose to battle each other. And I agree though with you saying that Bernie, that his supporters are more based out of heart. We'll see how that plays out in the voting booth.
Yes, we will.
But it'll definitely be interesting to see, based on that, how many Bernie supporters are working out of an ego-based idea of wanting to change, but in the way of changing for their benefit versus the benefit of society as a whole.
And I think that that's where that slang term Bernie bros comes from, which is, sure, a lot of Bernie supporters are heartful and open-ended and have a lot of gratitude, but then there's definitely some who come at it from a very egoic space. And I think that those exist on both sides, no matter what Democratic candidate you're talking about. I think some of their followers are fantastic and maybe some aren't. But let's look at that for a second, because I've been thinking about this, and I think that you're a great person to hash it out with. So let's look at this. So let's just pretend that the Bernie bros were coming at it from an egoic place of well, I want free health care, and I want my student loan dropped, and I want my kids' daycare to be taken care of. Say they like the ideology only because it will support them in the choices that they've made. Well, that's okay. That's how a lot of people choose. But is that a heartful space and stance to take? Should we, for example, student loans, take out loans and then not have to pay them back or have the taxpayers pay them back when that was definitely a choice we had made? Now, I know that college ridiculously priced, and there has to be something done about that so that the future can afford to go, even if that's the first 4 years of college are taken care of on a tax dollar, like let's call it community colleges or something, or taken care of for the kids. I think that's a great idea. But what I'm concerned about is that is a big offering that Bernie is stating. Now, he won't get all of it done. None of them do. But these are very big constructs. And then if we just fix one of them, for example, I'm talking specifically about student loans, does that help people make better decisions in the future? Or does that just have me, for example, picking up a tab for someone who went to college and I didn't go because I knew it was too expensive and it wasn't going to do anything for me? And so then you get my ego coming into it too. So, of course, this is my projection and my curiosities and what have you, and my concerns, I guess we'll call it, is if we get rid of everyone's student loan, does that mean that they make good money choices in the future, or does it just give them just enough leg up so they can get their head wrapped around everything? I don't know. What are your thoughts on the school thing?
I think that it can be used to create a bridge from our previous construct to a new construct, because in today's world, we don't need college like we did, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's not, and for the people that, have school loan debt, most of those people are, 30s and older that are still working on that.
Sure.
And I don't think that really it was their choice in the first place. I think that it was the construct that they were told that they had to, you have to go to college in order to make enough money to support yourself. That's what, parents, the baby boomer parents were definitely telling all their kids, you must go to college. And so it wasn't really a choice. It was a construct that they just were walking into. And so nowadays we don't have that same grip where you have to go to college for 4, 6, 8 years to get certain degrees in order to get certain jobs. There's a lot larger of an open market for people that are willing to hire based on experience. And I think that should continue to grow, and I think it will continue to grow, because we know that life experience is actually the best teacher versus, a school environment, at least the type of schools that we have nowadays. So I would hope that that forgiveness of school debt and loans would be able to be used as a bridge to help people that were forced into that construct be able to, walk into the new place where we can create a new way of hiring and leading the future with new tactics.
Brilliant. You're just bringing something beautiful to the table here, and this is why I love going back and forth and looking at this kind of stuff, is they were put in a construct of you have to. If you don't go to college, you're going to be waiting tables, and they kind of had some scare tactics to get you to go to college and usually spend a bunch of money you didn't have, and oftentimes parents weren't able to help their kids out, so that fell on the kids to pay for. So now they are trapped in a construct and really didn't get to make good choices because of the social pressures and maybe even their parents' pressure and such. So yes, I agree that they were definitely manipulated, no doubt.
Right.
And I agree that if some of that could get shaved off, that would open up and relieve a lot of stress and maybe resentment even. Yes, brilliant. So I want to look at something else really quickly here. So when we talk about getting rid of student loan, and let's just pretend this happens in the future and there's forgiveness and stuff, I think you're onto something huge. I think that you're and this is why I love throwing this stuff around, I think you're hitting on one of the things that could taught in this space, which is we now start